Hey everybody, this is Sam Elliott64 and welcome back to the RoboCast. And before we actually begin with the episode, I actually do want to make a little bit of a, not a statement as such, but a little bit of a, informational piece here. Anderson9132, our good friend, he hasn't, he's still with us. He's not, in any trouble or anything, but he isn't going to be featuring as much in the RoboCast this year just due to, being incredibly busy over the course of the year. And, we all are, it's been trying times this year in particular. And, things have just kind of caught up with him. So he probably won't be joining us for the majority of this season, which is a bit of a shame, but, we absolutely wish him well. And hopefully we'll have him on a couple of times throughout the season. It'd be quite nice to, have him to have a couple of hours of free time. But he's been ably replaced by Jevan from the RoboCast Newsweek podcast. Jevan, you've stepped up to the big time, my guy.
I have.
What's up, Jevan?
Very big shoes to fill, and I hope I do everyone proud. Having done doing new stuff, it's helpful that I have a little bit of insight. Clearly, I won't have as much insight as the guests on this, but it'll be. I hope I add something. That is my goal here.
I'm sure you will do.
You'll do fine.
Yeah. Well, we've got Steve the AmericanKilljoy joining us, and obviously WorldofWoodrow, and we have a guest. You may have heard him a little bit at the start here. Introduce yourself, sir.
Oh, me? Oh, hey, Ed Robinson, Sharko. Hi.
It's good to have you back, Ed. Obviously, we didn't get to see you much last season due to you arriving fairly late in the day. But you're here as a full-time competitor again for 2020. How have you been?
This is my first time being a full-time competitor since the Comedy Central run back at Treasure Island.
Wow.
That was the last time I was an actual competitor at BattleBots. Yep.
Wow. And you brought Sharko back slightly different to how we've seen it in the past. Obviously, you had in the past, a vertical spinner set up on Sharkoprion. This time, a lifting, clamping jaw. Why the change?
Well, the old Sharko was made from junk. It was a propane tank set on its side and a couple wheelchair motors. And we always just built with what we had in the shop and had a pretty good record. He was better than 50-50 on a win-loss. But we came into a little bit of money, and John designed this really fancy weapon system that was all pneumatic with quick release valves. And we spent big money on big Black Max motors, and we built a whole brand new robot for this season.
And it is spectacular. I mean, it
was nice to actually have money to build a robot with, yeah.
You see it, going around the arena, and it looks like a great white shark in there. Like, not that the old one didn't, of course, but it looks the part, as you always put together a beautiful looking machine.
Thank you. Well, sharks that don't bite suck.
You're not wrong.
So we had to bite. We built them so we had lots of big bite.
Absolutely. Obviously, you mentioned John, of course. It was mentioned in the episode, obviously, he did sadly pass away over the course of the year. Was it particularly difficult for you going into BattleBots with a new team? Because obviously, you've been with John for the better part of 2 decades fighting robots. Well,
Zach and his buddy who were there with me, Zach used to drive. He built and drove Deviled Egg a couple seasons ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I beat him with Sharko and that rumble against him and Kraken when I knocked them both out.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so we became friends, and he visited me when I was out at Slab City, and when everything happened, I'm like, I need somebody to help me wrangle the bot. So him and his buddy came together and showed up there to help me wrangle the bot. And I tell you what, it was a godsend to have him there. I could not do that all by myself. It's a 250-pound robot. Moving that thing around and getting all the parts here and everything else, I couldn't do it by myself, and I wasn't coming because I was by myself. And Zach and his buddy stepped in. So it was really great to have him there.
Absolutely. And, regardless of the situation, and obviously it is great to have you back on the show. And, seeing Sharko fight, because you never disappoint in terms of entertainment. Regardless if you win or lose, you always bring the show. I think that's the main thing.
We're there to have fun. We're there to inspire people to have more fun. I mean, look at what we got. We got Rusty coming in this year.
We'll get to Rusty. We will get to Rusty.
Definitely.
Much to say.
Absolutely. What a wonderful thing that is. But
awesome.
Yeah, let's talk about the first fight of BattleBots 2020. Who'd have thought we'd have actually got here? The first fight is between Whiplash and SawBlaze, 2 teams from the top 8 of last season. This is a rare thing I think it's fair to say I think Whiplash made a mistake. It doesn't happen very often.
Do tell.
But I think that the wedges that they went for, the kind of flat surfaces, I get the idea what they were going for, but they had no ground. They had so much ground clearance, and SawBlaze just exploited that. And not that SawBlaze make many mistakes. That team are so well oiled. They've made the top 4 in the past. They're so experienced, especially now. They've taken this machine so far. It seems like a bit of almost a lapse of judgment. I think they underestimated how good SawBlaze's weapon was going to be.
So I believe they sacrificed the ground clearance to add shock-mounted top armor to balance it out. They knew that their tops were going to be what SawBlaze was going to be aiming for. I mean, it's the nature of the weapon.
That's right,
So yeah, shock mounting the top armor was probably a good call, but as we saw, SawBlaze made short work of it.
It didn't really
anyway.
Yeah, it weight distribution kind of became a problem here, where you got these 2 front pieces that were. We do understand that the purpose of those was to, and Pete Abramson kind of went over it, where the idea was that it was going to get caught up and hit those little
uprights,
yellow potato chip things.
I think it worked a couple of times.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like, it was supposed to, that was the way it's supposed to work. The problem is what happens when SawBlaze gets to your side. And if you've seen any fight of SawBlaze or Megatron for that matter, it's gonna beat you to your side. It's gonna get underneath you. I mean, Jameson's got that ground game
very well
nailed down. Yeah.
I mean, it was a match of 2 drivers, wasn't it, as well? Those 2 are just, probably the cream of the crop in terms of driving ability and drivability of their machines. Eddie, obviously, you were kind of in and around the arena at this point. What did you make of Whiplash and SawBlaze? 2 high-end machines, it's fair to say.
I was up in the audience. I stayed around for the first 4 matches in the audience up in those opera boxes.
Oh, in the pods, yes. They were nice. They were fun.
That was awesome. It was like completely beautiful view, 3 monitors. We had stage production assistants bringing us water. It was so totally awesome up there. The fight, watching it from that place and in that position was amazing. It was just really a high action, very well paced fight. Every time he brought that blade down, we were just screaming.
It was so impressive. Like, that weapon didn't do anywhere. Like, it did some damage to Son of Waiachi last season, cutting the arms, if you like. Of
some damage. We thought it retired it, Sam.
Well, okay. It did some significant damage to Son of Waiachi. Like, the levels.
They figured out after the energy transfer when it first hits to shut it off. It never keeps spinning. They hit, stop it, bring it back, and reset it. Because after that initial hit, all the energy's gone.
Right,
after that point, you're just going to get hurt. Yeah. And they drove it beautifully. They hit, brought it back and reset. Hit, brought it back and reset.
It's one of one of the benefits of having something like Megatron on the lower weight class, that they can test out this sort of design and they can learn how to drive it better, and then they can scale it up. And I think this is one of the robots that it really does scale up well for. And it worked. It worked superbly. And I called Whiplash before this episode aired, and I feel quite silly seeing as I was backing SawBlaze at one point this year, knowing we were going into a season. So I'm kind of hitting myself really for
it's fight number 1. There's plenty of times to catch back up.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I do also think as well, like as was mentioned already, SawBlaze was so well driven. I think if you look at last season when they changed to this new kind of, I think it was last season they changed to brushless, wasn't it, SawBlaze?
Yeah, they were brushless hipster last season.
And this year they've had a year to kind of refine it and make it even better than it was before. You look at SawBlaze now, okay, it's one fight. Okay, let's not get ahead of ourselves, but it's going to be so hard to beat. It's just such a big, scary machine, and it has a dangerous weapon. It's got it all.
Yeah.
Oh man,
and it's really interesting too, because I know early in our preview we talked a little bit about these 2 bots with weapons that can score points, but rarely had that knockout punch. I mean, well, with SawBlaze and Waiachi, that was a whole separate thing, but it kind of pulled Waiachi apart. It wasn't just like a couple big hits. It wasn't like Tombstone level hits, or like a couple hits in your history. So with SawBlaze, like it slowly pulls you apart, and I think we did see that in this fight, where over time it just started getting more and more hits on, and then there was that one kill shot. I mean, there wasn't really much that could be done there. So
we all have extra armor.
Unfortunately,
on the top.
Yeah. Unfortunately for Maddie, it didn't work out.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a shame.
The top is never that protected. Most bots don't attack the top, so you just don't armor the top that well.
Right.
Yeah, it's a shame for Whiplash because obviously they had such a good season last year in the fight nights. They've started off with a loss, which I think they only lost to Witch Doctor, was it last year? I'm fairly sure they're going to recover. Yeah. Let's face it, they're too good. They're too good.
Yeah.
I suppose at this point we should move on to fight 2, shouldn't we? Which is Mad Catter and Fusion.
Oh, I wish Anderson was here because when he said that Fusion was a fireworks box, I don't know if he meant literally.
Literally.
That did come to mind.
Oh, man. I mean, I will say this. Okay, Mad Catter did very well. They took the hits extremely well. They drove well. They kept the pressure on. This was Fusion's fight for me. You saw the panels flying off of Mad Catter. I know it's sacrificial armor.
Yeah.
Bear with me. There is logic to my madness again.
Uh-huh.
It did seem as though the weapon of Mad Catter did die. And I do think Fusion, had it not set itself on fire, would have eventually won the fight. I don't think that Mad Catter had an answer for it. With that said, Fusion being a new robot, we've discussed already, new robots
robot
being...
Yeah.
Yeah, need to get things in the swing of things. Fusion didn't really have the opportunity to be tested and what have you, and now it sits at 0-1. It lost to Mad Catter. Mad Catter was the more reliable machine and therefore took the hits.
The more complicated you get, the more complex it is to build.
No, big time.
Yeah,
I mean that was pretty clear this time. I mean, with and Pete brought it up later in the episode where to simplify it for watchers of the show, robot combat is a little bit of rock paper scissors. I mean, it's more complicated than that. Yeah. But you have your rocks, which are your big defenses, like your ducks and stuff like that, who have a little bit of weapon capability, but they're basically made to take a beating. You have your paper, which are your flippers, ones that try to get around and try to dominate you in other ways rather than just destroy you. And then you have your scissors, like your tombstones, your bite force, your swayachis, stuff like that. This was like watching a rock up against like clown scissors, like huge clown scissors. like this was one of those you don't expect weapon power like this. I mean, it's they say it's the first robot to do a vertical and a horizontal.
Crazy Coupe 88 wants to know your location.
Yes, I was gonna say I knew there was a robot that totally did it, but maybe not to this degree.
To compare Crazy Coupe 88 to Fusion is a massive injustice.
Yeah, that's just not no. But with the Waiachi bots, it's really it's Fusion at home. With the Waiachi bots, it's interesting. It's interesting because they have this. They are full blown like they know how to make weapons powerful. That much is clear.
Machine form.
But I think
those guys know what they're doing.
Yes, definitely. But it seems like when they come up against something that can really hit them back, it seems that with their armoring, it could use a little bit of improvement, possibly, because it seems to the sides of their robots. Hydra last year, as soon as it met something that could hit it, that was game. So it's going to be interesting to see Fusion throughout the season. I know it's a rookie bot from a veteran team, but it'll be interesting to see how they rebound from this because Mad Catter drove a perfect fight. Aside from losing its side panel, which was the one mistake it made in this fight, but it box rushed, which was a great strategy.
That was so fast as well.
Fast. Oh.
It was incredible, and they've obviously, learned a lot of lessons from last season where obviously, they're an experienced team in their own right, but they've turned up with a machine which is now a lot more competitive than Mad Catter last year.
I mean, it's worth saying they took this design to China with them for King of Bots and managed to run it in a bit there as well. Yeah, I think this is going to be one to really keep an eye on. Perhaps the Dark Horses last season maybe didn't show off what the team is capable of. This very much does. The driver of Mad Catter recently, like last weekend, won the Norwalk Havoc event, didn't he, with Lynx?
Yeah, it's a Lynx driver.
So he's a superb driver, and it's a really good bot. Not just an art bot, not just a competitive robot. It's an all-round good robot.
I was going to say, Ed, you're a big guy
I
on
don't know if I'd call it an art bot.
Yeah, well, at least at least the design on the
it's a
front
hybrid.
It's artistic, yeah. It's
Surely,
painted artistically.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you are right. It's not an art bot. It's very much a competitive robot that looks beautiful with the paintwork on the front.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's very artistically done.
Yeah, it is gorgeous, and hopefully the smile off the cat's face won't be wiped off anytime soon.
I know. I hope so.
I suppose we should move to fight number 3, which was between Axe Backwards and Malice.
We got 2 fires in a row.
I'm doing very well in bingo.
They were right behind me in the pits, and I got to see the bot after the fight. It was amazing.
This is what happens when you put fuel in a place where it can be easily hit.
Do you remember when Warhead set Complete Control on fire?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
It was kind of like that. It was literally like that. Oh, Axe Backwards.
They blew the tank. They hit the fuel tank, and it boom.
Yes. It did go boom. It really did. Axe Backwards.
Don't you like when things go boom?
Oh, I love when things go boom.
There was some
More boom,
dispute over
please.
whether Axe Backwards had flamethrowers on the back, but I'm glad to know that it was just it exploded, and that's
Literally, it exploded.
It was a mystery. It was a mystery a little bit when they showed us that preview, that trailer. We're like, where is this fire coming from? Because at this point, we didn't know that Axe Backwards had flamethrowers until now. We figured like, Malice. Yeah, Malice has a mini bot that has flamethrowers because that's a thing that robot fighting teams do. But no, it was completely different. And wow,
it was something, wasn't it? I mean, don't get me wrong. Again, Axe Backwards bringing the spectacle. It's an incredibly complicated machine.
Love those guys.
It's just it frustrates me how they haven't had a fight really. For me, I think they've won once in the past 2 seasons, which fair enough. But they haven't fought anything for me that really suits them to fight, because they always get given a horizontal, and the horizontal just always just peels it apart.
Right.
Or Mammoth,
Or Mammoth.
Or
Mammoth
that.
was very fortunate, I think, with the hit that it got.
They've had 2 spectacular first round fights, though. I will say that both are quite memorable for the different reasons entirely.
Away from Axe Backwards, I have to say congratulations to Malice, because they are a new team. As much as they've got experience from being at BattleBots before with Bunny being on the Shatter team last season, and I think she's been on other teams as well in the past.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Malice is her baby, or that team's baby, and it's very clear that I think they were due to compete earlier in the year before COVID kind of took over the world and stopped everything. But it's clear that they've carried on working on it, and for a first timer, it did very well. It did the damage that they set out to do.
Yeah, definitely. And they've invented a new weapon type as well in Drumette.
Is it a Drumette? Is it a disc? Where does it lie on your scale, Jevan? You made a scale for this.
I mean, it defies the scale.
So what if I were to put Minotaur's drum sideways? What would you call that?
Shame.
Drum?
I'd call it "Put Me Back on My Wheels," I think. Yeah, no, it's a peculiar thing. It's certainly a different weapon type, and I don't think it is anything like we have seen before. I've heard it referred to as a disc, as a drum, as all sorts of things, but I think it is definitely its own thing. It makes Malice be more unique in that way, which is really good to see, because it's difficult to make a spinning weapon different to the others these days. I mean, Fusion does it by bringing 2 and one of them being a triangle. Axe Backwards does it by being a full-bodied drum. But horizontals are sort of, we know what to expect now, and the fact that they've brought something a little bit different to the table is really encouraging to see. And,
I was going to say, if you put Mad Catter next to Warhawk from last season and take the paint off and ask someone who doesn't know robot combat to tell the difference, they're just going to be like, they're the same thing.
Same vibe,
Yeah,
but,
I mean, we've talked about that lineage before.
Yeah, we have. Let's not go there again.
Well, speaking of, fall down that rabbit hole. Speaking of rabbits,
I believe Malice's doesn't Malice's disc come from Warhawk?
Don't.
I'm fairly sure. I've heard that.
No, it's much bigger, Sam.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure I've heard someone say it came from another robot which had
Maybe
it
it's
as
the
a
CAD.
Maybe.
That's what I was just about to say. I think the CAD might have. They just stretched it a couple inches.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. And apparently it's not the only one they have. They have other ones. They have
the,
other kinds of weapons.
A purple weapon that they've made
Okay.
as well. I believe they made that was one of the things that they were able to do with the extra few months.
Okay, make more weapons.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, I have to say I was upset. Apparently, the rivalry between Kurt and Bunny was all prearranged and everything, and they cut a lot of Kurt's down to make it just look like Bunny was having a go.
Oh man.
Storytelling, eh?
Thanks.
I want to see angry TV Kurt because he's such a nice guy in person. He wants to ham it up so much, and I don't know. I appreciate it, but man,
it is a shame for Kurt that once again he starts off the season with a defeat. But
at what point do you start asking?
Well, they did. They said this on the show, didn't they? They did say on the show,
Yeah.
when do you start looking at the design and thinking this isn't working? What do I do?
Yep.
Realist. If it was me, I would give it to the end of this season and say, okay, I've tried this. It hasn't worked.
Yeah.
Time to move on. But it is unique. That's the thing. It will always be welcome at BattleBots because it is so different to everything else, and I appreciate that. But at the same time, there's being unique, and there's being unique for unique sake. There comes a point where it's just think, maybe I should try to.
I wouldn't know anything about that. No.
Oh, Ed, never change. Let's move on to fight number 4 between Bloodsport and Skorpios, 2 teams that ended at 3-1 last season but didn't make it into the top 16.
Madness.
Bloodsport is something to be feared, isn't it?
Yes.
Having fought him in person,
I was going to say,
not to be trifled with.
You fought last season in one of the basement fights, didn't you? Obviously, that was a slightly less refined version of Bloodsport than we saw today.
That was the original Sharkoprion that was built out of propane tanks, too. Wheelchair motor, so.
Well, would you like a rematch?
Oh, absolutely not. Number one, I don't have a robot, so I'd have to jump in the arena myself.
I reckon you could take
it.
Good idea. You swallowed swords for a living. I reckon you can swallow this. No problem.
Yeah, possibly. Get in my belly.
Well, Skorpios couldn't handle it in the end, could they? I mean, they're notorious for being able to take hits as well, which is amazing. And Bloodsport just slowly pulled it apart.
Peeled them.
Yeah.
Peeled them like a grape.
Do you peel grapes?
I don't know if you peel grapes.
You do when you're peeling
banana. That's a fruit, isn't it?
If you're peeling
it is, but it's
you sit around peeling grapes and eating them while you lay on the couch.
Yeah, that'll do.
Sure.
You can do surgery.
You do
like
you,
grape,
Jevan.
but anyway. Bloodsport and Skorpios. I mean, what is there to say other than Skorpios? They tried their best, and they did get underneath Bloodsport a couple of times. Again, much like Whiplash, I think they made the wrong weapon choice here.
I think Bloodsport did a perfect weapon choice.
They did.
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
100%.
I'm glad they made a note of this too. This is what's nice about having Pete Boxside is that he can actually explain why teams made certain decisions, and that's going to be a really great insight. Where
we had a little telephone right back
choice.
there, and we could call him right before the fight and tell him what our strategy was.
Absolutely.
It's one of the criteria this year, isn't it, that you have to announce your strategy before you go in.
It goes in as part of the judging. If you go in and say, I'm going to try to attack the side, I'm going to attack the side, and you never attack the side, the judges count that against you.
Interesting.
So it makes it almost gives it a bit more to do on TV as well. Instead of just having the strategy section because the Roboteers already had that before, but actually then having somebody like Pete there to almost relay that information in a way that's understandable is really good to see.
Great for the audience watching. It's really great.
So whenever you watch a sport, I don't know, particularly in the US, because I don't really watch American sports too much, I'm very sorry. But like when you're watching, for example, soccer on a Monday night, you have Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher. They've got this screen analysing the way that the players are playing football, playing whatever sport. This is the BattleBots equivalent. And, it's showing, it's explaining to the audience why teams are doing what they're doing instead of just, this is what they're doing. This is why they're doing it. It's another layer of information to make the experience just that little bit better than it was before. And I think the inclusion of of Pete the Bot Whisperer, phenomenal. Absolutely great stuff to add to the whole experience.
I think they should have showed him more. They didn't show him enough.
Yeah, I think they showed him for the main fights, didn't they? The first fight and the last fight, and that was pretty much it. But
I want to see more of him.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be able to see more of Pete throughout the series. But back to this fight, if I may. I mean, Skorpios, again, much like Whiplash, I think they chose the wrong weapon, because if you see, they had them against the wall at one point, and the saw was bent.
Yeah.
I don't see Bloodsport, as much as Bloodsport has this amazing weaponry and amazing power behind it this year, I don't see them bending the disc. If that makes sense, I think the disc is
not as easily.
No, exactly.
That one, yeah.
Yeah, the even if they'd have used the flamethrower grappler, I think either that or the hammer saw, yuck, then they'd have stood more of a chance. They potentially with the hammer saw could have taken out the Shremek, and you could see in the fight Bloodsport were going over had they kept their spinner on and they turned it off, which, you know, excellent thinking on the spot.
Yeah, give it a rest.
Yeah, this is the same thing with Bloodsport last year, where like they need time for this thing to cool off. It must generate so much heat or pull so much current or whatever the case. They don't want to burn their speed controllers out. But I mean, it's
Gee, I wouldn't know anything about that either, would I?
Oh dear me. Oh well.
Maybe the choice of the stall was to maybe like do like a Red Devil where score points with sparks.
I think another thing as well was, I think they struggled to counter the disc, because I think the reason they chose the disc was because it offered more protection to the top.
Right. Exactly.
Bloodsport. That's why they chose it, because obviously if they choose the tri-bar, there's 3 big, nice, juicy gaps for Skorpios to get their weapon in. Whereas the blade, the disc,
even if it stops, it's still armor.
Exactly. It's got something in the way of Skorpios' sword, which worked in their favor.
I wonder if they didn't know what Bloodsport were going to do, and they put on what they thought they would do best with, and then when you get it to the box, they've gone, oh dear, they've got a disc on.
Yeah, because that can be changed at the very last minute, right before you weigh in.
Worked out.
Well, hey, they got more fights coming up. They'll make up for it.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. Skorpios is a well-oiled team at this point. They've been around the block a few times. Speaking of teams that have been around the block a few times, 2 very experienced teams in Craptin Shrederator. I'm so sorry.
Wow, Sam.
I take it.
Are we going to have to cut that one, or are we leaving that in?
We'll leave it in because it was a genuine mistake. I'm so sorry. Captain Shrederator. And
Well, if you look at his record going in, it was like 2-9.
Do you know what? My heart genuinely goes out to the Naves, because you can say what you want about them as a team. They have their critics online and what have you. Yeah. Captain Shrederator is a dangerous robot. You do not want to.
It's funny when you say Brian Nave, everybody goes.
That's what I mean, right? People will have their opinions on the guy. I don't really have any interest either way, but Captain Shrederator is a robot with so much potential, and every time it goes in the arena, you get something spectacular. If it loses spectacular, if it wins spectacularly, it's a show.
It brings a show. And
they had LockJaw on the ropes. They
were doing so well. It was like Shrederator of old. Like it was doing exactly what you would expect the shell spinner to do.
I don't believe that even Tombstone broke their
wedge.
rear wedge when they fought last.
And he took it right off.
Yeah. Yes. It was a clean snap cut and done. It was impressive. I think Captain Shrederator this year, they've taken it all back to 2003, I believe they were saying.
Yep.
And this is when Captain Shrederator was being the beast that it's known to be. I think it stands a chance this year of doing some proper damage and upsetting a few teams who maybe thought that it was an easy ride. I don't think Captain Shrederator is an easy ride.
Oh gosh, no. Anybody that calls him and thinks it's going to be an easy fight, they shouldn't be thinking that.
No. He seems to have a hard time against vertical spinners, though. I will say that. It's vertical spinners with pokey bits out the front. Like, if you could just get underneath that shell, you're sending him flying.
You say this. I don't remember the last time Captain Shrederator had a fight that wasn't a vertical spinner.
It's interesting, isn't it?
So they had LockJaw here, they had. Who did they have last year? Well, I know they fought Vanquish in 18.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look this up. Let's while I'm at it, think of something to talk about.
Okay, but yeah, it was nice to see. It was nice to see the more from Pete again, where we got to learn that this LockJaw is a completely different one. It's completely new from the ground up, brand new build. You wouldn't know if it looks almost exactly the same. But internally, hopefully this time we're not going to see many LockJaw burn up fires where Donald's pushing it too hard and it's just dying at the end of fights because it just can't take no more.
Okay,
there's a lot of custom work in that robot. There's a lot of stuff that they machine. Even the motors are one-offs.
So I've managed to find its fight history on the wiki. So actually their last fight of last season wasn't against a Vert, it was Blacksmith. But before that, they fought Black Dragon, which is a Vert, Witch Doctor, which is a Vert, One Who, which is a Vert. Obviously, they fought Vanquish. They did fight Petunia, which is a Crusher, Sub-Zero the Flipper, and Endgame. So, generally speaking, they've had 1, 2, 3, 4 out of their 8 matches have been vertical spinners. So it doesn't really suit them. Obviously, the fight against I think they had an issue with Blacksmith, didn't they? Blacksmith pushed them into pushed them over, didn't they? They tipped them over in the screws.
Yeah.
Petunia got the lipo. Sub-Zero. That was it. Against Sub-Zero, it was battering Sub-Zero, and then it just died on the spot, didn't it? That was it.
Yeah. What was it? Was it the magnets that locked it to the ground? I thought we had figured that out.
He just got stuck to the floor.
Yeah.
And then
that's why he took the magnets out.
Oh man, they are just unlucky. I think they're just an unlucky team.
Well, the end of this fight is obvious because unlucky because they get caught on the screw that dies. It just burns out.
and they show afterwards as well, the reason why they weren't spinning after a certain point was because it was like a little hair, wasn't it? This little pin.
Yeah, that pin that was holding the brake and disengaged.
Oh, dearie me. It's always something.
The screws now, the screw didn't burn up. What happens to the screws is they have a circuit breaker. So at a certain power level, they shut off because they burnt the motor up and it's expensive. So now they automatically reverse.
Noise.
Yep. It's all automatic. They automatically reverse, and if the power is too much, they automatically shut off.
Interesting. So just stay away from the screws.
Stay away from the screws.
Stay away.
Yep.
That's the idea. Oh dear, poor old Captain Shrederator. But LockJaw, a win's a win for them. They'll take it. I think they're always going to be there or thereabouts, aren't they? They're a good team these days. Doddle Hudson and LockJaw. Let's talk about
San Diego boys. Represent.
Let's talk about our Lord and Savior, Rusty.
Yes, please.
Rusty.
Now, I think it's fair to say that I didn't have them down to win this one because as much as Sporkinok as well is a unique design and something very different, I thought it had enough in its armory to defeat Rusty because Rusty, God bless it, it's not a fighter, it's a lover.
Yeah.
It is everything I love about BattleBots.
It's great.
I had a feeling you'd love this robot.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I've been building out of junk for my entire career. It's amazing.
It is something special. It is something special, and just the way it looks. Like again, I mentioned when we did our preview, it's like it's got lost on the way to work, and it's just somehow ended up in the battle box, and it's now having to fight its way to survive. Basically,
I can see the anime coming out.
Yeah.
It's like Mad Max 3, No Way Out. Once you're in.
Well, I also loved as well. I believe the builder's is it Dave Eaton? Is it?
It is.
Yes.
I saw some of the pictures that he was posting of him eating like popcorn out of Rusty's head. With Rusty covered in blankets, watching the BattleBots with him. It's just so beautiful. I love it. I love it. And Rusty, it worked, and it self-righted.
Yeah.
I didn't believe
that was amazing.
Yeah.
Did not think it would do that.
It was a very Chomp style self-right.
Yeah, but sort of more controllable somehow. No, it's funny you said that you didn't think that Rusty would win this one because I did, and I'm just going to lord that over you. And
Woo.
Yeah, no, Rusty, I absolutely adore it.
I'm amazed how well he gets around on those tracks.
It is so fast. It's so fast that David was struggling to control it a bit.
Well, there is something about Rusty internally that you may not know, Jevan. Rusty is brushless.
I did know. Yeah.
Yep.
It's got brushless tracks.
Brushless tracks.
That's awesome.
It's so dumb.
U.S.
and I love
military, take note.
it. Excuse me. It's a shame for Sporkinok.
Yeah.
Because I think they had the fight under control. I don't know what happened to them. If you have information, Ed, it'd be quite nice to know.
Sporkinok?
Yeah, do you know what happened to them, or?
No, I was actually getting ready for my fight, standing in line right now.
Oh. Well,
right now during the episode, I was standing in line waiting for my fight.
Oh, wow.
I wonder if it was some sort of drain on the power. They seem to be struggling to get that lifter back down. And whether that
broke pretty quick into the fight. I watched the fight on the TV show.
Yeah.
That broke pretty quick into the fight. It just quit working.
Yeah.
It was like one
it's
lift and that was
interesting.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting watching the fight back. I've watched it back at least once or twice to kind of figure out what went wrong with Sporkinok. And
the lifter just quit.
The lifter quit, and there was a point in the fight where the wheels just aren't on the ground anymore. So I was wondering whether or not the lift bent something or bent part of the frame that their wheels are now not touching as good as they were.
It seemed like the left wheel was stopped, the right set were going round. I wondered if they'd managed to get high-centered on... Because Rusty went into the match with 4 front forks, and it came out with 2 or 3. I wonder if it may have got high-centered on one of them even.
It looked to me like it was high-centered in the show.
Yeah. Like, we've seen it in the past, like, Tombstone's chain high-centered it. Like, it's just a tiny little piece of metal, but it's enough
doesn't take much.
Exactly. It's enough to, unless you've got giant wheels like Ed. But, it's not a difficult thing to do to high-center one of these things. They're set up in such a way where they're optimized to run in perfect conditions. As soon as that is varied, you're in trouble. And in this case,
that is a huge part of building a robot is that ground clearance. Massive part.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and a lot of teams are making the most of the flat floor for once.
Yes. Well, it is still flat.
Much to the TV show's distaste, because they're not fond. I know that both Greg and Trey aren't very necessarily fond of people kind of taking advantage of the ground game as like, I don't know, because wedges do what wedges do, and I mean.
Wedges do be like that.
I do find it quite ironic that the people that built the wedgiest wedge once upon a time.
Yes, and I thought about that too. But I feel Go ahead, Ed.
It's a winning strategy, but it's not television strategy.
Yes,
correct.
That's a wedge.
It's effective, but not entertaining. I think that's fair
exactly.
Yep. I suppose we must move on to Ed. Your time to shine. Sharkoprion and Smee. It didn't quite go to plan. Talk us through it.
Well, at first, when the match started, I noticed immediately that my anal fins, which are like wheelie bars that keep the front end down on the ground, I did not tighten them up going into the fight. So as soon as I hit the gas, the front end came an inch off the ground.
Right.
Every time I went forward, my front end came an inch off the ground. I never could get under them. No matter what I tried, as soon as I hit the gas, my front end went up and I couldn't get under them.
Well, that's gonna cause issues.
Yeah, that does limit, especially because your weapon is now yes, it's a crusher, but I think primarily it is a lifter, isn't it?
It is primarily a lifter, and inside is a big wedge. There's a huge wedge inside, and the tip of it's a wedge, and my wedge wasn't on the ground.
And that's immediately put you at a disadvantage. Obviously, Smee Smee is the biggest wedge.
It's a pretty massive wedge.
Before we carry on any further, can I just appreciate the fact that they had literally a dining room table wheeling this thing into the arena, and it just kept coming. There's just more and more of it.
And it's heavy duty, man. Because of the size of it, you'd think it'd be a little less substantial. That thing is a monster. It's amazing.
It's so big, and credit to the team for putting something like that together. Obviously they have success in the beetle weight class with Smee. I think they've done a featherweight as well, but a heavyweight.
It's hard to scale up.
It's so. I think the wedge as well is like so many inches thick. It's ridiculous. This
crazy thick.
Is dumb.
I poked a couple holes in it. I actually broke one piece. They had to take it out, so we lost a couple E's.
You stole their E's off them. How could
I
you?
ate a couple of E's, yeah.
That means it's gone down to 20 now. And
No,
Well,
because
what happened is just over halfway through, because it was a pushing match, I lost the speed control on the right side. My
Yeah,
one
I was going to
wheel
be asking
cursed
about
in.
that. Yeah, I was
My
going
one
to
wheel
ask about that. Yeah.
My last 5 fights, I have finished with one wheel for over half the fight.
goddamn.
Yeah, no fun at all.
I was going to say because I thought maybe because they had those two little spinners going, and they were actually doing a fair little bit. There was a little bit of tire that was being chewed up a tiny little bit, but I was wondering if
can I brag on my tires?
Go right
Go
ahead.
for it.
Those tires I designed and built those, and those things just are amazing. They took a little bit of cosmetic damage. They weren't hurt at all. I had to replace a little bit of rubber.
Oh
It
wow!
was nothing. Those things are just amazing tires.
Mm.
So it wasn't the weaponry of SME that killed your drive. Then it was just
No, they didn't hurt me at all with the weapon. Nothing. They had a little bit of cosmetic damage on the tires.
Okay.
The speed control burnt up, and it was mounted upside down. It got so hot, it melted the solder. The MOSFETs literally fell out of the body and were laying inside the bottom of the robot.
Oh no!
At the end of the fight, I'm pulling out electrical components, going, that shouldn't be there. That shouldn't be there. We bought a speed control off of the Mammoth guys.
Okay.
Bought a Cobra off of them, stuck it in there so we'd be ready for the next fight. That was the only damage. My speed controller burnt a little bit of cosmetic damage on the tires. But it's hard to fight with one wheel. I was waiting to get counted out.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, it did seem like throughout the fight you were desperately trying to get some angle to get underneath them, but you couldn't quite get the right approach. And because they're floppy, if you like, and they go around you, there was no way of getting around them and attacking them.
It's a good looking bot. When they get around you like that, it looks like they're doing damage, whether they are or not.
I think the way that they described it was like kind of like a snake. Like, like a boa constrictor. Yeah, they get around you and they just kind of squeeze you to death and cause you to have problems and not be able to fight your fight. That's that they're an irritant. And
if they can turn up the weapons, they got a killer robot there. They need to turn up those weapons a little bit, though.
I believe they had problems. I remember talking to someone and said that they had a lot of issues with the weapons in the first place. They didn't think they were going to run at all.
Right. I think they put some 3D printed gears in there right before the fight because they didn't have any spares.
Yeah, correct.
Wow.
So
they made some right there in the pits of the 3D printer and stuck them in and ran.
Awesome.
Crazy.
And that's why they were so surprised that the weapons ran the whole fight.
Yeah.
Now it makes sense.
Well, all they ever hit was rubber, so there was never really any steel contact with the weapons. They were perfectly sized. They just hit the tires every single time they came in.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like they are token weapons on SME, bearing in mind that their main game plan is to surround and push.
Yep. They're there to hit the active weapon rule.
Yeah.
Yes. And one thing that we really noticed in this fight is that SME does a really good job, and the Beetleweight does it too. It does a really good job of shrinking the arena. Basically limiting
it was hard to drive.
Yeah, limiting you to Ed, they limited you to like a corner of the arena for a good portion of that fight.
That was when my speed control blew up and I couldn't get out of the corner, and they were just right there, man. It was pretty.
Yeah. It's a really neat machine. It was nice to see the rear of SME finally, because it was a mystery to kind of figure out how the heck is this thing going to drive. So it's got springs on all those. Yeah, well, now it makes sense. Where now, like, when it hits something, it's going to wrap around, and when it backs up, those springs relax and it's able to drive. Now it's like it clicked finally, because I'd never seen a real picture of it.
They had big heavy-duty springs on it originally, and they were so strong that it wouldn't even bend. They had to take all those springs off and put all new ones on that were less.
Hey, whatever works.
Overbuilt it.
I'll say it did work. Now there is another thing that was mentioned in the broadcast, which I do actually need to ask you about. Obviously, I think they mentioned, I think it was before the fight, that this was going to be your last go around, Ed. Is that true?
Well, as a lot of people know, I because of everything that happened in my life, John and I were going to go sailing when he was going to get his cancer treatments, and then we were going to go sailing around the world. And then he passed away. What happened was we got rid of everything. We closed our business down. We closed the shop down. We gave away most everything. He sold his house. I sold my motorcycle. We were going to go buy a sailboat in Florida and go on and hit the ocean and go sailing around the world. Passed away. And so all of a sudden I was there with nothing. I'm out in the desert in a friend's land, and I got half a robot. I couldn't make it, so I sold the robot to afford the trip there. and that means I sold the robot, so I no longer have Sharko.
No more Sharko.
No more Sharko. He is gone.
Oh.
He exists. He's now at Norwalk Havoc Robot Fighting League. He's going to be their house.
That's one thing. Yeah, that's one thing that's nice about this community. That we're like, if somebody's going to sell the robot, and I said this to my dad when I was watching BattleBots today with him. I'm like, he's probably sold the robot, but to be honest with you, it's probably going to go to somewhere nice where people are always going to love it. You know, that's one of the things where like somebody's going to love it, and it's going to stay in our group.
Yeah,
so
it'll get a run out again. I'm fairly sure it will be seen again.
Sure. Well, all the bins of spare parts that he's got. There's spare motors, spare speed controls, spare radios, tons of stuff for spare tires. He's got plenty of stuff to keep that thing running for 2 or 3 more seasons easily.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. But that isn't the end for you, though, is it?
Well, I'm working on a new robot, but like I said, right now I'm a hermit. I live in the desert. I'm self-employed now. I don't know if you know what a virtual worlds are. I'm sure I work in Second Life.
Okay.
I make robots.
cool.
They call me Botman. I build NPCs like werewolves and fairies for quests and things like that. If people want to fight dragons, I build the dragon and I script it and animate it and everything. And that's how I make my living. It's not a lot because, you know, I'm making my money playing a video game. Come on. And I live in the desert. My shop is a little bitty 4x6 hut. I don't have a robot, but I'm building a new one out of trash. If it gets done in time, I'll be back. I don't think it's going to be done this year. So actually, right now, I don't have a robot. I don't have the money to build a robot. I don't think I'll be back at BattleBots next season.
Oh, it's a shame, but I say at least we have another season of Sharko to enjoy, and hopefully we'll get to see a little bit more later on of Sharko performing at its peak performance, because that's what we want to see, right? That's what we want to see, you know.
That's a brand new robot. This is only his. He had fought twice in China and once here. That's only his 3rd fight.
Absolutely. It's a shame we didn't get to see it more in this fight, but, you know, mitigating circumstances, these things do happen.
Hey, we had to make the judges earn their living, you know.
I was going to say,
the only fight that went the full 3 minutes.
The only fight in this episode that went the full 3. God damn.
Yeah, somebody had to make the judges honest.
Yep, absolutely. keep them going. Well, let's talk about the final fight, the main event. The robots were Tombstone and Endgame. Endgame, of course, if you remember back in 2018, calling Tombstone out.
Yeah.
You know, that was on my my
Here's
bingo
the cocky kids.
Well, they were back then. I don't think they can be called cocky kids now, considering the fact that what happened, because goodness me, Tombstone out of the arena, no less.
There have been 2 occasions where I have been out of my seat and applauding a TV. Behemoth versus Apollo in Robot Wars Series 10 was one of them. This was the other. This was... You don't do that to Tombstone. That's... How dare you? But at the same time, man, oh man, that is incredible.
It was a dream shot.
It's... Okay, one thing as well, I don't think Tombstone was actually mobile anyway. I think Tombstone was dead.
He was dead, yeah.
Because you can see it kind of twitching. It wasn't... I don't think it was stuck in the screws. I think it was kind of twitching because it was dead.
It was sort of rocking back and forth.
Right, yeah. It's almost like it was... Because it looked like it was dead on the right-hand side. And the left side, it's almost like where you drove an RC car too far away from your remote, and it's just... like that's the last signal it had, and it's still trying to go forward, but... Because it got stuck on like that, the part of the screw where like it's either protecting the mount or the motor on that side. But yeah, but 2 or 3 hits and it was flying through the air.
And I didn't get to see it. I was outside after my fight, and all of a sudden the fight started. I heard him announce the fight starting, and then like seconds later, I hear all the builders screaming.
Yep.
I'm like, oh my God! What happened? I missed it. It was like, out of the arena, out of the arena. I'm like, wow, Tombstone knocked him out. No, Tombstone got knocked out of the arena.
What a great hit.
Right?
I mean,
never saw that coming.
It wasn't even the easy bit of the arena to get him out of.
No, it was they got toasted. It was incredible.
It was the duck. It was the part where Duck got stuck. That's
where
it died.
Toasted.
Yeah.
We call it getting toasted.
Toasted.
Wowee. I mean, I do feel a little bit smug because I've called Endgame to win the series, so I feel a little bit smug watching Tombstone fly out the arena.
It's fight number 1.
It's saying nothing. But considering the amount of energy that they dished out, I mean, Endgame have done a really good run. They beat Cobalt at the end of last season. They did okay in the Desperado tournament. They lost to Minotaur, of course. They won their fight against Duck at the end of last season. There's a little bit of momentum going now, which they haven't really had before. They had that 2 fights back in 2018 where they won their first 2 fights. Fairly unfortunate, I think, to lose to Bite Force the way they did, because they had the fight won.
Yeah, Bite Force
everybody
died.
loses to Bite Force, so.
They did.
Yeah.
They did, but they nearly didn't. They nearly beat them, didn't
Bite
they?
Force was being counted out, and then
and
came
just
back to life
suddenly
somehow.
started working again. Yeah, incredible. This was Endgame's coming of age fight. I'm going to say it now because they, as we said before, yes, they were kids a couple of years ago. They probably a little bit optimistic calling out Tombstone in 2018. I don't think they had the know-how, and you pumped up. After your fight,
it's your first season, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Of course, you're going to say, "Oh yeah, we can beat anyone. We can beat Tombstone." They're nothing, because of course they had just won in China back then as well. That was when they just won. I think it was FMB, was it, something like that?
Yeah, Fight My Bot. They just beat
Death Toll.
Dietor.
That's it. Yeah, correct.
Right.
So they were riding a high, and
Yeah.
they
But
got
pulled
the
them
fight
out,
that they
and
wanted.
They've dealt the goods,
Yeah.
Yeah,
This version is incredible. The fact that they'd done their research, gone back and watched fights
Every
of
fight.
Tombstone to see how it attacks, so they knew how to go about it, and then they had to throw that plan out the window because Tombstone did the unthinkable and went for the other side.
Right. They told me I got to fight SMEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEE. I'm like, how am I going to research SMEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEE.
It's just, yeah. I mean, that's just a wobbly wonder, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the first thing you do is research a bot's fight and see how they fight and get some videos and go on the internet. And I'm like, totally okay, SMEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEE
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, the fact that Endgame, you know, they put a lot of effort and diligence into fighting Tombstone, and it paid off. They got the win. Where does Tombstone go from here? I mean, you know, they've obviously lost in Fight Night before. They lost last year in spectacular style to Rotator. It pretty much went 3 minutes. They obviously, or did they go 3 minutes? I can't remember.
It was very close, but it was a knockout.
I was going to say, it was
the
like
last couple of seconds.
It was like 2 minutes 58 or something stupid like that, wasn't it? They didn't get a pasting like this, did they?
No, this was.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say this was quick, and you know, they were expecting a quick fight, as they said. They just didn't expect it to go that way.
That quick. Tombstone's one of those bots that it either hits you or kills you, or you can try to break it down. It's so much power in that weapon. It's hard to figure out what is going to happen when the energy transfers. Anything could happen with that robot.
Yeah, I think tactically it would have been maybe more in Ray's interest to use a weapon where they wouldn't have known what way he was spinning it. Where this particular weapon that he chose, it had teeth on it, so they knew it was going to spin clockwise. So maybe thinking back, possibly different weapon choice. He had a bunch, but I mean that's me being an armchair roboteer. So I mean,
it's all easy in
anything
hindsight.
else.
John would have been interesting.
No strategy survives first contact anyway. So
this is true. But what I would have rated Ray so highly if it had got in upside down. Because it would have spanned the other way. That would have been like, you see, didn't see that coming, did you? I don't think it would have mattered. I think Endgame had this regardless. It's a design for me that's just kind of optimized to fight Tombstone. We've seen it before with Bombshell. We've seen it with Bite Force.
Yeah.
It's the wedge game. Big bad wedge.
Yep.
That wedge has certainly caused it problems, especially with the Vert as well in recent seasons. It's kind of just starting to get Tombstone's number, and it's taken a few defeats now. I do wonder where he goes from here with Tombstone, but credit to Endgame, they got the win. They called them out and they got the win. You can't say fairer than that. Well done, well done to Endgame. And that pretty much brings us to the end of the episode. Ed, I have to say a massive thank you once again for joining us, because you've been a semi-regular on here for the last couple of seasons. You've joined us.
I'm amazed you guys put up with me.
Oh, we love having you. It's always great to have you on, because I've said to you many times, if there's anyone who's going to design an art bot that's going to win the giant nut, it's going to be you. And
wait till next year.
I hold you to it. I'll hold you to it.
What I need is a couple of sponsors, and I can finish this bot, and then I'll be back. But otherwise, we'll see what happens.
If there's any sponsors out there listening to this, all two of you, there's a man in the desert in California.
It's not like my robots aren't high profile. I mean, Sharko's in every picture on every ad and every page.
Exactly. There's a man out there.
This man is the face of BattleBots 2020. Come on now.
I like Big Bots and I Cannot Lie. It's a song that I've been singing for years.
Yep.
I was singing it. One of the production assistants heard me, and I guess it. I mean, last year on my team shirts, it even says she should have brought a bigger bot.
Yep.
There you go.
Yep.
Absolutely.
That's always been my thing. I like Big Bots and I Cannot Lie.
Anyway, folks, that's been the first episode of BattleBots. There won't be any news week while this is going on because me and Jevan, one, we can't be bothered, and two,
Oh, thank God.
why would we do a news week when there's BattleBots reviews happening every weekend anyway? So
This is the
news.
yeah, come on now. I mean,
Current events happening all the time.
We missed out Norwalk Havoc in November. We're very sorry. You know.
Oh, yeah, we did. Whoops.
Oh well, never mind.
We've covered it in this episode. It's fine.
Yeah.
We talked about it.
Yeah, we did.
Ed brought it up.
Exactly. Yeah. Sharko lives up there now. There you go. Look at that.
That's the guy that bought Sharko. Is the man that sponsors Norwalk Havoc and owns the makerspace and everything up here. That's the guy who actually bought the shark.
There you go. You see, it all came full circle. On that note, I think it's time to end. So I have been Sam Elliott 64.
I've been Steve the AmericanKilljoy.
I have been WorldofWoodrow.
And I'm still Ed.
You are still Ed, and God bless you for it. And the three of us, myself, Steve, and Jevan, will see you next week for more BattleBots. Thank you very much, and see you next week. Bye-bye.
So
Ciao.